Hello, BookTube. I've been meaning to make a video about writing for quite some time now. And like a lot of videos that I've been meaning to make for quite some time now, I failed miserably every time I've tried to make this video. Including perhaps today. This is my fourth attempt at making this video today. So, I think before I talk about what's been bugging me about my writing, I should probably set things up. So, if you've been following along with my channel for any length of time, you will probably know I am not all that fond of fiction. But I have, over the last few years, fallen deeply in love with manga. And in fact, I have known for quite some time that the stories I want to tell, in the way I want to tell them, is more along the lines of comic books, heavily inspired by manga, rather than strictly prose fiction. But I'm not good at drawing, so if I did want to pursue this, I either need to hunker down and try to get good at drawing, or find somebody who is good at drawing to help me tell the stories that I want to tell. But the main topic for this video is really to talk about some of the projects that I have been working on and struggling with for a number of years now. Largely, I've been having a hard time figuring out which project I should focus on, because I have several of them that are clamoring for my attention. I have in the past talked about 3 projects that I've been either focusing on or that I have a good idea of where I want to go. And there are 2 other projects that have been either I've thought about them in the past and have thought that they could work in a story arc for one or a number of the projects that I'm mostly focused on. So the project that I've been focusing the most on is a superhero project called Scorpius, which is about a young superhero who takes the superhero name Scorpius. I have a weird and complicated relationship with superhero comics and superhero stories. On the one hand, there is something about them that is deeply attractive to me. But on the other hand, I'm not entirely sure I fully understand the superhero. That said, I have, over the last few years, done a lot of work on Scorpius. I have a lot of story ideas for this story, and I really enjoy the idea of deeply world building a small location, a city the size of, say, San Francisco or Austin, Texas. But there have been 3 major issues that have stymied me when it comes to Scorpius. One is partially world building. In superhero comics, the world is usually that of outside your window, particularly with Marvel. There are perhaps fictional cities and a smattering of fictional countries, but for the most part, it's our world, which does cause a number of problems because for a lot of these stories, um, the world has been influenced, not our world, but the world of the story has been influenced, has engaged with, and been impacted by superheroes and supervillains and all the assorted uh, accoutrement that goes with it. That the world really should be significantly different if you're growing with a world with a long superhero history. And so I myself am rather annoyed that I'm not doing that. That I haven't really done enough to figure out how this world that I'm creating is going to be different from this world because it should be. The second issue I've had with Scorpius is I'm not totally sure where the story is going. Now, again, it's a superhero story. There is no ending. But I like to have an idea of where things are going, of where the overall story is going, rather than just uh, going on and on and on. And my third issue is with Scorpius himself. Um, there are two variations on Scorpius. The one that I focused on the most is of a character who has physical superhuman abilities, um, super strength, speed, endurance. He has a healing and a poisonous touch, or that he can also use to heal. Um, so in a way, he would be this world's Spider-Man, just not as jokey or as self-loathing and self-destructive, which, if we're honest, Spider-Man is. Behind all of that jokiness is somebody who is deeply, deeply devoted to punishing himself long after that he's atoned for his mistake. But I'm really not entirely sure what to do with my character. This version of Scorpius, I don't really connect to as much as I would like to, even though I have a ton of stories for him. It's just he remains a cipher to me. But there is another version of Scorpius. This one would be more magical. He would have various magical powers as his superpowers, and maybe not as much on the physical end of things. And this version of Scorpius, I do have a better handle on his character. I'm connecting to him a lot more. And so I'm thinking that I probably should go with the magical Scorpius as my main character. But I would then have to change a lot of things with the rest of the story to make him work. So I think with Scorpius, okay. So I think what I'm going to do with Scorpius is figure out what I want to do with making this world more of an alternate world, and how superheroes, villains, the super science, alien invasions, what have you, will affect the world, and try to make it work for me and also probably focus more on the sorcerer or witch Scorpius than the more physical Scorpius. So I think that's probably what I will do. Moving on to another project is the Fates of Chaos, which is more of an epic fantasy inspired by mythology. And with this story, I have a clear idea of what the story is going to be. All of the beats, the how it ends, I have a really good idea. My problem is the world building. I need to populate this world with lots of gods and with mortals and with locations. And I need to make up names for all of this. And that has me rather out of sorts. And I'm not entirely sure how to proceed with that. Even though I know where the story is going, I don't know the characters. Or, I have an idea of like the characters. It's just really expanding the cast and that sort of thing. The other project that I've mentioned a few times is The Journey, which is a portal fantasy that will feature characters from our world who are kidnapped by a magician from another world. And the characters have to find their way back home. And they go on an adventure, a journey, through various other realities, worlds, having adventures, until eventually they find their way back to their world. Although some of them won't survive the trip, and some of them might decide to settle in different worlds and start families or just to live. And this story has been with me for quite a number of years. It's just, I'm not as passionate. I have a good idea of where it's going, but I'm just not as passionate for it. It just doesn't interest me as much as Scorpius or the Fates of Chaos. So I haven't really done as much work on this story as I probably could have. And the Fates, the Journey, is one of those stories that I originated as a novel idea, but the problem is that how I would do it would be a world book. So you could do like a one book story where they're in this one world, and then at the end they return to Earth. And then, but if you wanted to expand it, it could be strung out. But I'm much more interested in what I could do in a comic format. So the other two stories that I've been thinking about, one is Bright Light, Deep Shadow, which is another epic fantasy about two characters who are going to end up being antagonists to each other. And one of them will be good, the other would be evil, but through the course of the story, where one of the two, like where they end up, is going to be told, with the end being their confrontation. And the other story is about, it's a contemporary story about modern, ceremonial magic. which has been a story that I've thought about for quite some time, a number of years. And initially, this was another story that I had thought about being a novel, and it could theoretically be a standalone novel. But more recently, I've seen it as a major story arc in Scorpius, whether as a whether however Scorpius's powers manifest themselves and what his character is like. So I think what I'm going to do, and this is what I hoped this video would help me do, is I'm going to continue focusing on Scorpius, kind of do a lot of work on trying to figure out what needs to be changed with Scorpius being more of a wizard or sorcerer or witch or whatever I decide to call a naturally born magic user. In this world, how that story would change and what would need to be changed and what more I could add to it, and probably go through some of my story arcs and plan things out that way. And also think about what I want to do with the world itself. What changes would having superheroes and villains and real magic and superpowers and super science affect things. And then I think I'm going to put the Fates of Chaos a bit more on the back burner and slowly build up the cast, starting with the core cast, which I think my problem is I'm focusing too much on genealogy and starting with, okay, so these are the first gods, and then they have these gods, and then they have these gods, and on and on and on. And so by the time I get to my cast, I've had to make a lot more generations. So I kind of need to, okay, this is the core cast, and then work my way as needed. And then also figure out what to do about mortals and locations and stuff. And then with the journey, I need to figure out why exactly I'm not as passionate about it anymore. Because I'm kind of not. Even though there are some interesting ideas that I have. But I think very much this story is not as it doesn't engage me as much as the other two do. And as far as the other two projects, I think both of them probably, well, I mean, one of them obviously has been incorporated into Scorpius, and I think the other one could as well, although not necessarily that final confrontation between the two antagonists, but really more focusing on Scorpius's character development. Anyway, so I do think this video was helpful, and I made it successfully. So it did what I wanted it to do. Hopefully you found it interesting or entertaining, or enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments down below what you think, and I will be back shortly with well, maybe not today, some more videos. Certainly tomorrow will be Poetry Thursday, possibly a tag video. I do want to make a video looking at some reading projects or reading events coming further in the year, what little is left of it. And I think on Friday I'm going to do a Library Builder Book Haul of Madness. I think that's what I'm going to call it. So, anyway, BookTube, I will see you next time. So, until then, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.